This is using your shell account. In this screencast, I'm going to give you a demonstration of connecting to the CodeLesson shell account server, which you can use as your own web server for purposes of experimenting and doing class coding exercises. As you learned from the text of your course, the coding that you're learning requires the code to be executed on a web server. The web server interprets your code and then generates HTML output, which is sent down to a web server. So if you've only ever done static HTML coding in the past, you'll find this to be an extra step, but hopefully won't be too much trouble to be able to do. And just an extra step to deploy your code to the server. And then when you make a change to your code, you'll have to re-update the server with the latest version of your code. So I'm going to take you from the very beginning where you provision your shell account and you get a password and a username, and then I will launch the FileZilla utility that you'll use to upload your code onto your shell account on the server. Okay, so your first stop if you are creating a shell account for the first time, which you must do in order to get started with this process, is to go to codelesson.com/shell. This page is your shell account management page. It gives you the ability to provision or create a shell account for yourself, and it gives you the ability also to view your login name if you're logged in, and it gives you the ability to recover your shell account password if you forget it. So this is sort of the home base for your shell account. This is what the page will look like if you're not logged in. If you're logged in, it'll give you additional information about what your shell account looks like. So here's what my page looks like. I've already provisioned a shell account for myself, so it tells me that I have a shell account. It tells me what my shell account username is. It tells me how I can log in to my shell account from a command line. We're not going to log into our shell accounts from a command line today. We're going to use FileZilla, so I'll step you through the process of doing that next. But you can see pretty straightforward resetting your password and a little blurb here about how shell accounts work. So basically tells you what you can do with your shell account. Okay, so codelesson.com/shell is the home base for your shell account. If you need to create one or if you need to reset your password, that's the place to go. Okay, we're done with this now, and I'll assume that you have provisioned a shell account at this point, and I'm also going to assume that you've written a little bit of code, because the whole point of this is to deploy code to a server. We want to put some code on the server so that we can start doing the programming that you signed up to do, right? So what I've done here on my desktop is I've done two things. I have downloaded the FileZilla software from the FileZilla website. This is a free download, doesn't cost anything. It installs on both Windows and Mac, so you can use it, no problem. And then I've also, just for my own convenience, I've put my PHP script called hello.php into this folder called PHP Hello World. Now, we're not going to do any actual coding in the screencast. All we're concerned with in this screencast is deploying our already written code onto the shell account server. Okay, so how we do that, now that we have the code in our folder here, I'll put this folder away and we'll go back to this in a second. We start by launching FileZilla. And you can see that FileZilla has a really convenient quick connect feature that we'll be using initially to get access to the server. The three pieces of information that you need to access our shell account server is host, which is the name of the computer, username, which is your username that was selected by you when you provisioned your shell account, password, which was either assigned to you or you made up, port you don't have to worry about. We're going to accept the default port. Port is just the communications port that we use to communicate with the server, and it's part of the standard. We don't have to worry about it. So host, username, and password. I'm going to give you the host name right now, which is sftp://explorer.codelesson.com. My username is Jeffrey, and my password is secret. I'll type that in, and I will click on Quick Connect. Now, you're going to see this scary looking little dialog here that says the server host's key is unknown. This is a warning that it gives you the first time that you connect to an unknown server, a server that FileZilla has never connected to before. It's a security feature. The first time you see this, it is okay to click on Always Trust This Host and say OK. And we are now looking at a window that contains our computer on the left side and the shell account on the right side. The remote machine is on the right side, and you can see that where it says remote site. Local site is the computer that I'm on right now, the one that's on my desktop right in front of me. And you can see that I've also changed into my desktop folder, and then I've changed into the subdirectory that I created on my desktop called PHP Hello World. So that's the file that I want to deploy, hello.php. Okay. Now, one common mistake that students make initially with this is they upload a file to their home directory, but we don't execute files in our home directory through the web server. We've created a special subdirectory just for web server files, and it's a subdirectory of your home directory. If this makes sense, right? So you have folders on your home directory on the shell account server, just like you have folders or directories on your local machine. And you can see that I've got a few files in here. What you have on your home directory will be a little different than what I have here, but you'll still have a couple of these files on yours as well too. But you'll also have, and this is the important thing to notice, is that once you connect to your shell account, you will have a public underscore HTML directory, and that's where your web files have to go. So remember to change into this directory. And when you first change into this directory, you will see a file there called index.html. This was automatically generated at the time we provisioned your shell account, and it is just done there so that you have a little something in your shell account. You know you're in the right place, and this is the place where web files go. Okay, now I'm almost ready to upload this file into my public HTML directory. But before I do that, I know I'm going to log back into the Explore shell account server at some point in the future. So I want to save my settings at this point. Your settings include the host name, your username, and your password. They also include the location of where you are on your local machine and where you are on the remote machine. So there's 5 pieces of information that you can save that will make it much faster for you to get back onto this server in the future. So the way we do that is we go up to the File menu and we select Copy Current Connection to Site Manager. Site Manager is a feature of FileZilla that gives you the ability to save logon information to any FTP or SFTP sites that you may be working with. By copying the current connection to Site Manager, you are basically saying, take this and I'm gonna give this a name, explore.codelesson.com. And that is going to be the name of my site in the future, so that when I go back into FileZilla tomorrow, all I have to do is bring up the site manager, double click on this explore.codelesson.com, and it will instantly give me access to this without having to type in a password or type in the FTP://business or any of that. It's just a big time saver, so you should definitely do it. Okay, now we have one more thing to do here, which is to actually upload the file. We double check first just to make sure that the current directory is our public underscore HTML directory, because if you put a PHP file in any other directory on your shell server, it's not going to work. I right click on the PHP file and select upload. I think you can also double click on it too. Okay, and by uploading that file, it now appears on my shell account public HTML folder. Now the final step, now that this thing is on my shell account, is to test it. And the way to test this is in a web browser. So I'm going to pull up a web browser next, and I will go to http://explore.codelesson.com /tilde Jeffrey. Okay, so what's being shown here? This is my version of index.html. Your version of index.html will be a little bit different, but remember when we first logged on to the shell account, you saw that there was a static HTML page that was in there. We create one of those for every student on the Explorer shell server, again, just for testing purposes and so that you can see that everything's working correctly. Okay, so now I can navigate to explore.codelesson.com tilde Jeffrey slash hello.php, and I'll explain the kind of weird syntax of that in a second there, but basically let me load the page, and you can see that it executes my PHP and returns hello world to the browser. Now, as far as the tilde goes, what that means is that sort of stands for your home directory, and then it's followed by your name, right? But because our web server will redirect all requests to your home directory into your public HTML directory, the trick here is that you have to remember that when you want to load one of the files in your public HTML directory in a web browser, step one, like we already discussed, is that it's already got to be in your public HTML directory, right? But you don't include public HTML in the URL in the browser, right? You leave that out. There's no reason to put it in there, and if you put it in there, it won't work anyway, right? So the syntax in here, and I'll put it up in big letters so that you can see it, is explorer.codelesson.com/tilde. And the tilde, by the way, is in the upper left-hand corner of your keyboard there. You probably never use it, but in this case, the tilde stands for your home directory. And then your username, it's going to be something other than Jeffrey, of course. It'll be whatever you selected when you provisioned your shell account, and then a slash, and then the name of your file. Now you can also create subdirectories if you want to. I'll go back to FileZilla here so you can see what this looks like. And what some people do, and I did this by right-clicking on my home directory, or my public HTML directory. You can see that I'm in public HTML right now. Now people sometimes want to say, okay, I'm going to create a subdirectory in here, and I'm going to call it unit_01. I say 01 instead of just 1 so that it will it'll sort properly in a list. It'll sort, you want 01 to sort before 12 or something like that, right? And you have the ability to create these subdirectories, and then once the subdirectory is created, you can well, this is making me want to reconnect here. Here we go. Okay, sorry about that. So I'll do this once again. I'll create a directory and I'll call it unit_01. Okay, there it is. I had disconnected from the server because I took too long to talk about other stuff. But you can see what happens here is I now have a subdirectory called unit_01, and I could upload if I wanted to go crazy. Just put another copy of the hello.php file, and when I do that, this is a good thing because it's sort of organizing my files into subdirectories. But when I do that, I have to also remember to put the corresponding unit_01/file, and it's the same file, so it executes in the exact same way. But the difference is that if I put a subdirectory into my public HTML directory, I also have to put the name of that subdirectory into the URL. Otherwise, the web browser won't be able to find it. Right, so that's just an option. I'm going to back up here and clean this up. Now I right click on this and I can just delete the whole directory. Yep. Okay, now everything is terrific. So basically that's it. You provision your shell account, you log into your shell account using SFTP with your username and your password, change to your source file directory on your local machine, which is on the left-hand side, change to your public HTML directory on the remote machine, the shell server, and then just go ahead and upload and then test your file in the browser. One last thing is that if you make a change to your file, of course it must once again be copied up to the server, right? So this is another thing that sometimes beginning students forget to do. If you make a change to the local copy of hello.php, then you save it locally and then you upload it again so that the server has the most recent version of the file, and it'll warn you to tell you that the target file already exists, meaning a file with this name that already exists on the server 99 times out of 100. That's okay, so you click on OK, and the latest version of the file, which you can see with this date and time stamp right here, has been uploaded to the server.